Bernie schooled the other candidates on the issue of U.S. foreign policy during the debate. He dropped a devastating line that you're going to see in the middle here, but take note, this entire back and forth is them trying to gang up on him over totally reasonable comments that he made about Cuba. But pay attention, because you'll catch the line that's just a absolute destruction. It's a power bomb of everybody on stage, and they don't know how to deal with it.
You've praised the Chinese Communist Party for lifting more people out of extreme poverty than any other country. You also have a track record of expressing sympathy for socialist governments in Cuba and in Nicaragua. Can Americans trust that a democratic socialist president will not give authoritarians a free pass?
I have opposed authoritarianism all over the world, and I was really amazed at what Mayor Bloomberg just said a moment ago. He said that the Chinese government is responsive to the Politburo. But who the hell is the Politburo responsive to? Who elects the Politburo? You got a real dictatorship there? Of course you have a dictatorship in Cuba. What I said is what Barack Obama said in terms of Cuba, that Cuba made progress on education. Yes, I think, really? Really?
Yes, because there's no comparing those two
continents. What Barack Obama said is they made great progress on education and health care. That was Barack Obama.
I talked to Barack Obama.
Excuse me. Occasionally, it might be a good idea to be honest about American foreign policy. And that includes the fact that America has overthrown governments all over the world, in Chile, in Guatemala, in Iran. And when dictatorships, whether it is the Chinese or the Cubans, do something good, you acknowledge that. But you don't have trade love letters with them.
This is 2020. We can't be reliving the Cold War.
Barack Obama was abroad. He was in a town meeting. He did not in any way suggest that there was anything positive about the Cuban government. He acknowledged that they did increase life expectancy, but he went on and condemned the dictatorship. He went on and condemned the people who, in fact, had run that committee. He also made sure to make it clear. And by the way, I called to make sure that I was prepared to, I never say in my private conversation with him, but the fact of the matter is, he in fact did not, has never embraced an authoritarian regime and does not now. This man said that in fact he thought he did not condemn what they did.
That is untrue, categorically untrue.
What did you tell him?
I have condemned authoritarianism, whether it is the people in Saudi Arabia that the United States government has loved for years. Cuba, Nicaragua. Authoritarianism of any stripe is bad. But that is different than saying that governments occasionally do things that are good.
Look,
that's what Barack Obama said.
The only way we're going to restore America.
I'm so annoyed that we have conversations like babies, like children. Nuance is important in conversations, and they just simply don't allow nuance. On that debate stage, nuance is not allowed. So yes, Cuba, is an authoritarian government. They do crackdowns on the media. There is no free press. That's totally inexcusable. I'm a deep believer in free speech. Bernie Sanders is a deep believer in free speech, and he's spoken about this endlessly. He even defended Ann Coulter when there were riots, when they were trying to get her to not speak somewhere at some college, okay? But it is also true they did a tremendous job increasing literacy. They had a very low literacy rate, and then Castro came into power, and he got it above 95%. I mean, you can pretend like that didn't happen, but then you're being silly. By the same token, Cuba developed a lung cancer vaccine. Now, are we not allowed to come out here and say, good job. It's a good thing that you developed a lung cancer vaccine, because that will save lives. Are we not allowed to say that because everything that's associated with Cuba is by definition bad? And if you utter any positive word at all, that means you're sympathetic to the government? No, that's ridiculous. Like, I could say very positive, kind things about the United States government. I love the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. I think it's wonderful. Free speech is so important. I love the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. I think that's wonderful. I love the New Deal. See, I'm saying positive things about the U.S., but you know what? We also shouldn't have done the Iraq War, which killed minimum 200,000 innocent civilians. We shouldn't have done torture. We shouldn't have Guantanamo Bay open, where we torture people. So you can't just say, oh, he thinks America's bad, Or, oh, he thinks America's good. Those are not accurate summaries of the conversation we're having here, because it is nuanced. We're having a nuanced conversation. But what they want to do is ignore what Bernie's actually saying and go, see, he loves Fidel Castro. That's not what he said. He said literacy is a good thing. See, this is what I mean. He gets these other Democrats to, defend absurd things, to take absurd positions. And look at Biden's tortured attempt to try to say, oh, no, Barack Obama never did that. There's literally video of Barack Obama saying almost exactly what Bernie Sanders said. It is effectively the same thing. They said, hey, you got to give credit. They made giant advancements in healthcare and giant advancements when it comes to literacy. But here's a bunch of problems that still need to be fixed. And it was Barack Obama who, this is one of the best things he did, was he started to open up relations with Cuba and move away from our, the embargo and the standoffish way that we treated them. And he was right about that. He was correct to do that. Now, the Republicans are reversing it, but Obama was correct to do that. Is Obama a Cuba sympathizer? A Castro sympathizer? Because he decided, let's not be standoffish with them anymore. Let's end the embargo. Let's open up lines of communication. Let's move in a more peaceful direction. No, that's the right thing to do. See, this is what you do when you have no argument, when you don't have anything noteworthy, substantive to say against Bernie. You just pretend he has positions that he doesn't have, and he says things that he didn't say, and you attack those things. And I love the thing he threw in there in the middle, because it really flips all this whole conversation on its head. Oh my God, why don't you condemn these governments? These governments do really bad things. He's like, okay, number one, I do condemn them. Number two, we've overthrown governments all around the world. All around the world. So should we, let's do nothing but condemn America. Let's have a non-nuanced conversation about that. No. See, for us, they allow for the U.S., allow all the nuance in the world, or just flat out ignore all the bad things we did. But for other countries, ones that are official state enemies, bad. You're only allowed to say they're bad, not good, authoritarian, evil, wrong, terrible. And the funny thing is, people have pointed this out. Weird. They only reserve this kind of hatred and anger for left authoritarian governments. They never do it for right authoritarian governments. He brought up Saudi Arabia. Bernie brought up Saudi Arabia. They're doing a genocide right now in Yemen, right this second, with our weapons, with our tax money. We're allies with them. They're on the freaking UN Human Rights Panel as they're committing a genocide. They behead people for sorcery and witchcraft and apostasy. They have political prisoners. They want to kill the women who protested to get the right to drive. And, nobody on stage says a bad word except Bernie. Nobody on stage is willing to say a bad word about Saudi Arabia because they're our allies and they're our oil buddy. See, you see how the game is rigged, man? Oh, you said the mean things. You said positive things about the mean dictators in Latin America, and that's bad. You only say bad things about them. And he's like, actually, no, I've condemned them as well, but given them credit where they deserve it. And also, let's have a conversation about these people who we support, who are objectively more evil. More evil. Very comfortable saying the Saudi government is way worse than the Cuban government. Very comfortable saying that. No, shh. Don't say anything. Shh. I hate this shit, man. I really do. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Bernie is correct. He's correct about what he said about Cuba. Obama was correct about what he said about Cuba. And Obama was correct in what he did in regards to Cuba. And Bernie's correct about what we've done with our foreign policy and how we've overthrown people. If these guys had any objective standards, you know what they would say? Hey, maybe somebody should do regime change against us in the U.S. Because as Chomsky points out, every government in the U.S., every president post-World War II, if the Nuremberg laws were upheld, they'd be hanged. So if they really had objective standards, they'd be like, it's time to do regime change here. Because we violate international law all the time. We're the international bully and thug all the time. But of course, they'd never say that. Like I said, you got a stage full of children, and then there's Bernie Sanders saying obvious things, and they object to the obvious things.